rare situation in a positive light that a coach of the caliber of Bob Stoops, both in name recognition and in ability and experience, can step in. The only situation I can liken it to at that caliber would be Barry Alvarez has done that twice at Wisconsin, where he's been far removed from his coaching career and transitioned to coach. One time when Brett Bielema left, the other time, I guess, when Gary Anderson left and was dismissed from his job. One time he coached in a Rose Bowl, Barry Alvarez. The other time was a one of the Florida games, Outback Bowl, Citrus Bowl for Wisconsin, and I believe he won one of those two games. I think he lost the Rose Bowl to Oregon, but they were very competitive down to the final possession. But that's the only time in which I can think of somebody of that stature that's been removed from the game for quite a bit of time, stepping in and taking the reins for bowl season.
Yeah, no, I think that's the only one that I can remember as well. So, I mean, Oklahoma is very fortunate to have a guy like that that's able and willing to jump in and like I said, not just be a head coach, but be willing to kind of help out with the recruiting, talk to the parents and things like that, do everything that he can to kind of keep the wheels on the bus. So it's a very unique situation, and I think he did a lot to kind of help calm the fan base in general yesterday.
Yeah, so if he didn't do enough in terms of wins and losses and championships on the field, I think the OU fan base and community should and will take this into consideration in years and decades to come in evaluating Bob Stoops and his legacy at Oklahoma. It's a pretty special one. Jason Ray on the line from Last Word on College Football. We talk Oklahoma football every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time. This is a special edition. We appreciate Jason being here to recap what was discussed at the news conference and what looks to be possible going forward for Oklahoma. So, in the remaining time that we have, these candidates go anywhere from what seems to be a reasonable list of Lanning, Venables, Aranda, Campbell, and others. And then people take it, Urban Meyer always gets thrown in as a wish list of some people when talking about a national job like this. So what are your preferences? What are your what does your candidate list look like in regards to preferences versus what seems to be reasonable or possible?
So I think first and foremost, one of the things that was interesting listening to the press conference yesterday from Joe Castiglione is he had really mentioned that that there was a ton of people that reached out has already reached out to Oklahoma, and indeed a lot of people that a lot of us on the outside looking in wouldn't have thought that anybody like that would have been interested. So don't know if those are existing head coaches, assistants from our, coordinators maybe from across the country that most people, wouldn't think of. So, I thought that was an interesting comment. He kind of talked about the understanding the speed in which he really needs to go through to go through this and get someone named. So, I think in terms of, yeah, and like you said, it's always kind of funny to notice that, Mark, this with coaching searches, there's just some funny names that kind of come out of the woodwork. So I think here's the list a couple of guys on the list that I think is either being contacted or are part of it. I think Brent Venables, I think, is number one on the list of many Oklahoma fans, previous players, and I think probably administration. I think that I'll just say I feel pretty strongly that it's not a done deal, but fairly close with Venables. So let's go on the other side and say, for whatever reason, doesn't necessarily work out with Venables. I'm hearing more and more that Matt Rule would potentially be a possibility. No, he's currently at Carolina. I don't, some of the things that I've heard that he's not really necessarily, in love with the NFL game. So wouldn't be surprised to see him come back. Dave Aranda is a guy, a name that's been mentioned. I think it would take a bit to get him away from Baylor. As odd as that sounds, I think he just loves the program there. He loves what he's building there. So I think that's one. I think Luke Fickell is a name that I've heard. Although he may be more of a candidate for Notre Dame, maybe a better fit for him for Notre Dame. I've heard Lane Kiffin, his name mentioned a bit. I think more so, Mark, from the perspective of Oklahoma feels like they probably need to get a guy, whether it be from a head coaching perspective or an assistant, that really has a lot of inroads within the SEC, just to kind of usher that new era in for Oklahoma, whenever that might be. Those are some of the people that I've heard. Mark Stoops is another guy name that I've heard a little bit early on. But at this point, Mark, I would be, I think, and of course you mentioned Urban Meyer. I think it's one of those that kind of gets linked to any job opening that comes up at the college level, especially a big time job. So I think, but I think the baggage that comes, and to a certain extent, Lane Kiffin as well, but I think specifically the baggage that comes with a guy like Urban Meyer that I don't think Castiglione would touch, in a million years. I mean, I could be surprised, hey, they could surprise me on both ends and him deciding to be offered and take the job. But I think, like I said, I think Venables is right now for me is the clear leader in the clubhouse. I think his affinity for Oklahoma, coached at Oklahoma from 1999 until like 2011, as the either the singular defensive coordinator or the co-defensive coordinator at Oklahoma. So he still has a big affinity for the program and just for the people around here. So he's turned down a ton of head coaching jobs. So I think this is a job that I find it hard to believe that he would potentially not take if given the opportunity. So I would say right now, of course, this could absolutely change by the time we talk tomorrow, Mark. But I think right now, based on what I'm hearing, is I think it's evolving pretty rapidly in a positive way for Oklahoma and Venables.
I've always said that two of the more fascinating places to be in sports that we have no access to would be an NFL draft room and whatever conversations lead up to the actual day of the draft. But just to hear the evaluation of players, the other aspects that go into that conversation of how to make that move, and the debates and arguments that go back and forth to determine what goes on in selecting 7 rounds of an NFL draft. I've always thought that would be fascinating. And then also to sit in at the back of the room during these coaching interviews and to hear the status of a Notre Dame, LSU, Oklahoma job opening, and what they're asking these guys and what that conversation looks and sounds like would be fascinating.
Oh, it really would. And I think right now, Mark, I think right now Joe even discussed this yesterday and was talking about the fact that they're moving much quicker than they have before. So, they're doing everything that they could to reach out. And he even, he played his hand a little bit. He said, yeah, there's some potential people that are involved in conference championships, and still playing that. They're trying to figure out the best approach to reaching out to those individuals with still being respectful, to what they're going through, still in season. So I mean, I think that probably speaks to Luke Fickell more than probably anyone in terms of being a guy. But yeah, he's, like I said, he mentioned there was quite a few people that have expressed interest, and there's people that we wouldn't think of. So I think and another interesting thing, Mark, is I think over the last two hires for Oklahoma, Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley have both been coordinators and have not been, with no head coaching experience. So I mean, that's kind of the model that he's had over the last couple of times from a football perspective as well. So I think that could be a method that he continues to go through.